Hello. Okay, so this is going to be the third key in the Oraculous Lineage series. The first two are already uploaded on YouTube, Patreon, and Substack, what I'm calling triadic transmissions. So there's the YouTube portion, and then on Patreon for this particular series, I do sort of like a recorded guided astral journey activation. I use the word activation lightly. That's just kind of the way it comes through, but of course, anything that you are already working with in terms of light body activations, ascension mechanics is just meant to like mirror what you're already experiencing and or what's like dormant in your field that's ready to be more seen or more noticed, more awareness added to it. And then the Substack is like the essence of the transmissions, where I share the written portion that comes through. So yeah, for this particular third key, I'm getting tingles on my crown as I start to tap into this a little bit more deeply. Excuse me, and I'm already burping. So yeah, there's definitely some releasing and clearing going on. Yeah, the third key that came in sort of like the Avalon Druid and Druidess, which I haven't used that term before, Druidess, and I was creating the thumbnail for this third key, and I thought I made a typo, and I had already like uploaded the thumbnail, and it came out Druidess, and I realized like it seemed like a typo, but it wasn't. It's a title, the Druidess, like a priestess, a druid, a female druid. So that felt like a happy accident that turned into something significant. And yeah, the Tuat De Danann also have been coming through really strongly as a part of this third key. So as I continue to like unfold, there will be, I really just bring through whatever I feel as I start the recording and just kind of let it layer in. The first two that came through, the first one was more focused on ancient Greece and the Pythia, Oracle of Delphi, and the second key was really focused more on Vulva and Sidhe, like the Norse traditions and lineages. So, but they all sort of weave together, and the Tuat De Danann came through a little bit in the second key, and then the first key, I believe a little bit of the Norse came through, so they all will kind of weave together, but each key will have like a main focus, and then I just also allow for the multidimensionality to come through, like especially in the Patreon portions. Some of the like celestial galactic influences, angelic blueprints come through. So yeah, this is sort of like, some of it is based on research, some of it is based on my own intuitive feeling channelings, memories, dreams, visions, etc., as well as, like I said, any external resources that I feel guided to use. And it's interesting because I wanted to sort of do more research on the Druids first, but I was guided not to do too much and just sort of type in a few different things that I have windows open on my computer that I can access as I feel drawn to do, which I often use that sort of flow style of recording on Patreon. So it will be a little bit like that. And a few minutes before I started to record, the number 66 kept coming through, and I just felt guided to type that in, 66. I've been seeing it all day. And yeah, just the first search that came in, I felt guided to just kind of read a little bit, because it kind of feels like a bit of an underlying energy that wants to come through this key. So 66, message focusing on unconditional love, harmony, and balance within home, family, and romantic relationships. It suggests nurturing your inner self and relationships, shifting focus away from excessive, that word felt really highlighted, excessive material worry, and towards spiritual growth. So shifting focus away from excessive material worry towards spiritual growth. It signifies divine support, encouraging trust in your path. So yeah, key themes: harmony and balance, love and nurturing, family focus, divine support. So with that as the one of the undercurrents, my mom's cat, her name is Gally. She's black and white, and she was using the litter box, and she was doing her scratching, like the digging that cats do. And something just prompted me, like how I've never looked this up before, I'm not sure. But I was like really curious, like why do cats dig after they use the litter box or go to the bathroom? So apparently cats dig to instinctively bury their waste, covering their scent to avoid attracting predators and to feel secure. This behavior, also known as, quote, covering, unquote, is natural, hygienic habit inherited from wild ancestors to hide their presence. I don't know why when I read that and I was like about to record, it just felt really synchronistic, because I was literally about to push record and my mom's cat just started digging, and I was like, Yeah, so this idea of a hygiene habit inherited from wild ancestors to hide their presence. So this idea of, I'm getting like this sort of image of like someone putting in an old-fashioned key to a lock and like turning it. It's a little rusty because it's probably been a while. And when they open this door, there's like this streams of light coming in. And I just heard like a door to the past. So working with the subconscious drivers and the subconscious, like, again, inherited subconscious behaviors seems to also be really coming through strongly. And I just posted on YouTube a transmission and Patreon, the Patreon portion I posted today, and the YouTube portion I believe I posted yesterday or the day before. That's not what it was called. I'm thinking about ancestral connections, but I think I called it like microdosing change, neural network, quantum neural network transmission. And so there's so many layers and connections coming in right now, so I'm just going to take a deep breath. Okay. So I referenced in the Patreon portion of the neural network, quantum neural network transmission, microdosing change, Maya Nartumid, who just published this article on Substack. And she talks about golden cities. And I find it very synchronistic. It's coming, I was really drawn to this when Avalon, the third key that wanted to be Avalon, is coming through. And I'll get more into this as we go along, but I just kind of want to go through the energetic strands that are sort of forming in, and then, they'll weave together as they usually do. But the concept of the neural network and this idea of a quantum neural network, like I was talking about on Patreon, when we go from like binary code, like the zeros and ones, and the alchemy of coming back into a more quantum processing collective. Of course, it starts within, right? So there's this idea of re-accessing the mists of Avalon internally, etherically, re-encrypting these internal, like the 7, sometimes it comes through as like the 7 subtle bodies. It doesn't have to be the number 7, but that is the general teachings that a lot of us have reconnected with. And so, as I was tuning in today for Patreon, I was reminded of an experience that I had on Patreon like months ago. And then I started to create this Canva presentation. I was supposed to do it and I wound up not doing it, but I still have the presentation, and I forgot about it. And I felt really guided to go back to it today when I was reading for Patreon. And there are 13 slides, and I was pulling the number 13 and the connection to essentially like the mother arc, mother God consciousness, the aqua frequency, the heart and the high heart and the throat coming together in the thymus, like where the unconditional love or the crystal atom is said to be. And like, bibliomancy, like I just kind of hovered over it and chose one of the slides, and it was the exact slide that I I was looking for. And I had written it so long ago, I didn't remember what was on it, but I had written 13 Stargate, integrating 12 Cathara grid, Catheric template layers. And I did reference this on Patreon today, but the one portion that I wanted to read on here, I actually did not finish on Patreon. I decided to save it for this particular transmission, and I am going to read from this slide a bit, but the synchronicity that really stood out to me is that I put at the bottom of the slide any references that I had used, and one of them was from the Ascension Glossary, the link Avalon Portals. And I wasn't even going to record the Avalon Druids, Druidess, Tuatha De Danann third keys today. But there were so many other synchronicities that also came through throughout the day that I was like, okay, I think it's ready. Because I recorded the second key, the Norse, probably already like a month ago when I was in Seattle. And the beginning of the first key was recorded in Costa Rica, but I didn't finish it for almost like a year when I was in Seattle. So the first key was like a timeline split. Like some of it was in Costa Rica, like I said, and then it finished in Seattle. The second key was fully in Seattle, and now the third key is being recorded in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure why I'm sharing that, but for some reason it feels relevant. And people are walking by. I'm in an apartment, so you may hear some people on the recording. Hopefully it won't pick it up too much. Okay. So during Patreon, when I was reading about this slide that I created probably at least a year ago, I was talking about an experience that I had while recording for Patreon while I was in Costa Rica, like about a year ago. And I was describing this visual sort of experience that I had been having probably since like 2020, I think is the year that I said it started happening. And over time, more and more would be revealed of this visual that I kept experiencing. And I was saying that it started when I would be outside taking walks under street lamps. I know that's like so specific, but that's how it started. So at least around sunset, because the street lamps didn't go on. And actually it was when I lived in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. And I noticed this dark blue, almost like, you know, when you crack an egg. One second. I'm trying to make my slide bigger so I can see. Okay. Even though I already read this on Patreon today, I'm going to read it again because the same thing happened when I tried to speak about this on Patreon earlier. My throat was like cracking. So there's really something about this energy that is like having a hard time translating for some reason. And I'm just doing like a simultaneous clearing while we talk about this. I really feel like there's a collective, if you're attracted to this, that is going through some sort of, before I even read this, back to why I was feeling guided to understand why cats do that sort of digging type of thing after. Hide the presence, hide their presence, you know, from prey, like to stay safe. So there is something symbolic about that. I mean, cats can be symbolic, the feline cosmic beings I've been feeling around for a while, and I feel them coming through. You know, Lyra has been coming through. I've been seeing Lyra on license plates, like Lyra, or variations of that for days now, and I didn't connect the dots until right now, but obviously Lyra, in the presence of Lyra, where they say, you know, a lot of people right now are remembering that the alleged origins of humanity began in like the Lyra Vega constellations, and I am not making that a definitive true statement, but I just know that is very strong in a lot of people's memories right now. And I think the more that we continue on these trajectories of, and one reason why I'm probably so inspired to tap into these Oraculous lineage series and to understand more, you know, of why I'm so drawn to this and why so many of us are so drawn to oracular abilities and how they manifest through different time evolution of our own consciousness, realms, dimensions, spaces, places. And yeah, so this idea of covering their scent to avoid attracting predators and to feel secure. The behavior, also known as covering, like I already read, is a natural hygienic habit inherited from wild ancestors to hide their presence. And so the way it's coming through the series as these keys, I feel like are actually sort of like, you know, each one of us has a piece of this key, you know, to like the antidote of no longer feeling like we need to cover up and hide to stay safe. And this throat, this high heart, thymus expansion, clearing, of course, the crown was, and it was and is such a big part of this. It's like there's a similar message came through on Patreon today, this clicking, this alignment and clicking of, excuse me, these layers and spaces of us. And when I say us, individually and both collectively, our soul streams, auric key codes and auric reorgs. I've been talking about auric reorgs, or reorganization of the aura. And a lot of us that are really right now having, whenever you find this, it's timeless, having this collective diamond body, diamond template, double diamond template, gem body, as Mayan Artumid calls it, activation. And actually, synchronistically, someone that I met offered to make some images, like created through some sort of system that they use, for some of the words that I felt guided to, that I was just channeling one day. And one of the images that he sent me looked so much like the image that Maya Nartumid used on her article for the gem body. So I have it. Maybe I'll share it for the article in the Substack portion so that you can see what I'm talking about at some point. And yeah, so this digging, if you will, and the transmutation of this, quote, covering and hiding the presence inherited from ancestors. And of course, that was, this idea of needing to hide and go into hiding, the natural devolution of consciousness, and this idea of the, fall, the consciousness fall, the feminine fall, all of this forgetfulness. Plasma's coming back online. A lot of people are really drawn to plasma right now. Plasmids are something that came through a transmission recently, and I'm diving more into understanding plasmid, and I've been making connections and dots with that as well. Plasmids are the small circular double-stranded DNA molecules distinct from a cell's chromosomal DNA, primarily found in bacteria, etc., etc. They replicate independently and carry non-essential genes that provide evolutionary advantages like antibiotic resistance. Plasmids are vital in biotechnology for cloning and genetic engineering. And when I said they're primarily found in bacteria, archaea, Archaea, and some eukaryotes. I know I did not say that correctly. Eukaryotes. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on that at the moment, but throughout the last few transmissions, I've been connecting dots through these. So if that's something that does interest you, I will go more into that on Patreon and in other transmissions. So I'm just kind of like leaving these breadcrumbs in a lot of these transmissions, because there's, again, so many layers and dots being connected in different spaces and places. So I feel like I keep saying that, spaces and places. But I did just want to sort of bring that through, because it feels so present right now in the energy. And collectively, this idea of feeling secure in sharing our presence. In fact, right now, I felt guided to release this, what I'm calling a current codes curation rotation. And I call it current codes curation rotation because it is like whatever current codes are coming through that I receive, it comes through like this, current rotation curation portal, and then eventually that will close out, and or if it stays open, another one will be added. I haven't decided yet. But anyway, the first portal that came through was the pearlescent presence portal, and all of this timing I could not have planned, like it's all just kind of very synchronistically unfolds organically as I just kind of trust the process and let things come through. And as I was reading on Patreon today, I felt guided to look something up. And not only did, like I say, the Avalon reference came through, but then the pearlescent waves were coming through. And yeah, so it's coming through again here and bringing back up the Lyran connection. So one of the amazing people that I love learning from, I haven't listened to him in quite some time, but when I really started getting back into Keylontic science and ascension mechanics, his name is Phil Gruber. Maybe some of you have heard of him. And I found him, I believe the first time I found him was from Portal to Ascension. And I have done some speaking engagements with Portal to Ascension actually this year, which I was not on any of the same events as Phil Gruber, but I did have a personal session with him. I think it was in 2022 because I was in Mexico. I remember that, yeah. But I had been like listening to him for years before that, probably like at least 2 years. And I remember the first time I heard him speak, I just was like, it was such a somatic response. Like my whole body was like engaged and understood, but like my mind yet didn't really know what he was talking about, but I felt everything he was talking about. So when I bring through certain things, especially in the beginning, I think I have a tendency to maybe over-explain or try to just over-explain. So I'm doing my best to remember the way Phil would always bring through things. Not that I'm comparing myself to him. I mean, he has like a million years of experience. What I'm saying is like when some of these experiences, terms, even if you don't, because this is how I started too, if you don't recognize something, but you feel something, like it's just about trusting the transmission that is like decoding different knowings, memories, codes within yourself, and that as you feel guided and or attract information and remembrances, so that's not for everyone. Some of you may already be very like adept at this, but just in case you're someone, whether it's me or anyone else, like if you're listening to or any information that you come across, or even sometimes our own dreams and memories, transmissions, channels that come through, like there's things that I've been shown, 5-7 years ago, and I'm still receiving layers of information and understanding, integrations, embodiment. So yeah, that for some reason really wanted to be highlighted. And anyway, back to Phil. One of the things I remember that stood out, he would often talk about the myths of Avalon, was actually like a mistranslation of one of the main planets in Lyra, was like Avalon or something like that. I know I'm saying that incorrectly, but and then it got translated to Avalon. So the myths of Avalon are really supposed to be like the etheric vapor from the quote origins of humanity in Lyra that etherically still exist, and this remembrance of Avalon is really this connection to Lyra, and that just always stuck with me so much. So as I was creating the thumbnail, I had used the template from the first key for the ancient Greece and the Pythia, which also was very focused on vapor. And so now the first and the third, it's like the Norse, the second key was a bit more like grounded, and I mean, it was very magical and etheric too, but the Norse traditions feel much more connected to like the grids of the earth. And the first and the third key were more, to me anyway, the way it's coming through is like the vapor, crystalline consciousness. And again, they all weave together and interact in their different ways. But that just seems to be something that I've noticed. Okay. So, just a quick little search that I wanted to bring, that I looked up. Ooh, I'm really like purging through the throat so much during this transmission. Okay. Avalon is a mythical, magical island in Arthurian legend, famously known as the place where King Arthur's sword Excalibur was forged and where he was taken to heal after being mortally wounded at the Battle of Camlan. It's often depicted as an otherworldly paradise, a land, quote, a land of apples, ruled by Morgan Le Fay. And it's so funny because, of course, like the Fey realms, the fairy, Tuat de Danann, the She, have been so, I mean, it wasn't a surprise to me because every time I tap into that sort of energy, the Fey and these like inner planes come through so strongly. So there's been a lot of synchronicity this week, actually the last few weeks within some of this, and I'm being really taken to like dreams, visions, like the internal landscapes. And when I read some more of Maya Nartumid's article, I will post it below so you can also like look at it and read it if you want to, as well as what came through the slide that I created and the experience that I was sharing about the the visual. And I will get back to that. But I wanted to tap in a little bit to the the mythical aspect of Avalon. And of course, I'll get more into the Druid and Druidess connections and whatever else seems to come through. I also felt really guided to the Emerald Crystal Cathedral Network on the Ascension Glossary. I'm not sure why yet, but I just felt like I needed to look at that. And of course, in the first paragraph, I did not look this up beforehand. I literally just clicked on the link and did not touch it. And it talks about Avalon key-coded portal system. So I knew there was a reason why I was drawn to this. And speaking of dreams, there was a dream that I had within the last like couple years. I don't remember when it was. And in the dream, I know I shared it on YouTube, but I was with people at the time who were in my life, who are no longer in my life. And we were trying to, they were trying, the few people I was with, they were trying to like burst through these portals. And they were actually Avalonian or Avalon portals, to quote Avalon, which of course, if we look at Avalon as this like inner plane remembrance of this sort of soul stream connection to Lyra Vega. And within this dream, it was almost like there was like a guardian consciousness that was being, I guess, downloaded through me in this dream. And when these other people I was with were trying to get through these like Avalon portals, it was almost like they were trying to like skip certain steps that needed to be like embedded within the person's energy field, or again, like the auric key codes and the auric reorg that I've been talking about for like, I don't know, a year and a half now. Like a lot of us going through this reorg within our aura, you know. And yeah, they were like just trying to bypass it. And I kept kind of like manifesting within the dream at like these different points that when they would try to get through this portal, it was like, again, this like, it was coming through as like this guardian of these portals. And collectively, I feel like a lot of us who sort of have these memories or just knowings, feelings, somatic responses when we tap into this energy, there's like these energetics, there seems to be this like, yeah, it's like my right side of my cheek right now and my jaw is getting so hot, like to the touch. Wow. Yeah, this like inner fire sort of like alchemical process of, you know, patience, perseverance, like the Emerald Guardians, the Guardian Consciousness, the founders, the Christos founders, you know, the Sophia Christos. It's like coming through so strongly. Whew. And being able to hold, okay, so this is not at all what I thought I was going to be speaking about, but I remember, and I'm saying this with so much, like, with a lot of love, not, there was just this interview that I saw. I don't remember who it was, or anything of that nature. I'd never seen these people before, but almost similar to the dream. Someone was like channeling a Christos energy or something, and they were like almost unable to hold the channel. And this heat that I'm feeling is reminding me, like it's almost like what's that expression, trial by fire? When they were channeling this energy or whatever they called it, it's like their nervous system, like they were not really able to hold it. Like they were just kind of like short-circuiting a bit. But that's just the way it comes through for them. Anyway, so this heat that I'm feeling is reminding me of this process of initiation and, again, patience, perseverance, embodiment. And that just really wants to be highlighted, as well as nuance and layering. I know I've said the word layering countless times at this point. But anyway, so I'm going to read the first paragraph of the Emerald Crystal Cathedral Network, because the word cathedral has been coming through all day, and I could like feel, and the word network. And in the last transmission on YouTube, I kept feeling guided to put in the auric key codes in the description box, Emerald Pools, and that song 10,000 Emerald Pools from Bjorn's has been coming through all week, so feels very connected. As Emerald Guardian projects have been focused upon the sacred heart of air, E-I-R-E, there has been the opening of the Avalon key coded, there we go, I was just saying, so auric key codes started coming through my field in like years ago, and I started feeling guided to put them on in the YouTube description boxes, and here they are written right here. So I didn't realize that was going to be there, but sometimes when we tap into like a similar field, into the quantum, sometimes we'll recognize similar phrases, codes, words in other conduits. Okay, Avalon, why do I keep saying that? Avalon key-coded portal systems as sacred mathematical sound tones of the ancient Hyperborean Emerald Cathedral entrances, which is so crazy because when I was tapping in on Patreon today, Hyperborea came through really strongly, and Hyperborea also came through, I'm remembering now, I believe in the second key code with the Norse traditions. There was a lot of reference to Hyperborea and this idea of like paradisio or paradise or Edenic timelines. So like I said, there is crossover, and they do weave together in really unplanned ways that I love. Okay, that were recently open and can be accessed from the Hill of Tara, which I believe the Hill of Tara, there's something coming through, of course, when you talk about Avalon and the Druids in Glastonbury, England, places in Ireland, being shown like Scotland, Wales, that whole area. But also, when I actually did some research a while back, I found out that my dad's family is actually, my last name is Austrian, and I didn't know that up until like the last few years, and I had no idea. And I actually went to Austria for like a day or two years ago before I even found out that my bloodline had Austrian lineage. And so when I found that out, I kept being shown the Fae. But I was like, oh, whenever I think of like the Fae and, the Avalon, that sort of lineage, I always think of the places I just named. And then when I looked up, I forget how I found this, but apparently there were those lineages that ran through Austria. But then there was some sort of, this was like, it predated a specific event. And then it kind of like got lost in the mainstream, I suppose. But there was a deep connection to the Fae and some of those traditions through Austria at some point before it was even Austria or something. So I kept getting that intuitive nudge, and then I did look it up eventually, and somehow I found it. I wish I remembered. I did this research a while ago. I don't have that, but if anyone else has had a similar experience, feel free to share. Okay. I want to keep going with this page because the next paragraph, Pendragon Castle talks about the Reading Rainbow Rounds and the Kundera Current. It doesn't say the Kundera Current here, but whenever you tap into the Rainbow Rounds. But this feels more like I will continue this on to Patreon if you're interested in some of the more ascension mechanics behind that. When I do the guided astral journey, I'll probably reference this Emerald Crystal Cathedral network, and the actual guided astral journey feels like it's going to be within this idea of this Emerald Crystal Cathedral network. So I will definitely save that for Patreon. So back to the Avalon portals and the dream that I had. And I remember after having this dream, I had a lot of synchronicity that sort of showed up after the stream. And so back to the slide that I created to sort of explain the experience that I was having. So I mentioned it was around like what, 2020, 2021 that I started having this visual. And I didn't know what it was. I would ask it questions, and eventually these blue branches that would then become, well, I'll just read what I wrote because it's better than what I'm trying to do right now. And I just want to explain that while I was recording for Patreon about a year ago, and I had this, I did explain this today on Patreon, so I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but it's coming through again. When I went to, so the way I do Patreon is like I'll just feel intuitive nudge to like bring through external resources and not read it until I'm recording. And so I did this. I guess that day I felt the connection to the Avalon portals and Ascension Cluster, but I didn't read it. And when I was recording that day, the visual that I always talk about came to me while I was recording, and I could see it all around me, and it was like expanding and getting more and more detail. And then I heard to look at the link that I felt guided to pull up, and it was like in real time bringing through the ascension mechanics behind what was happening. It was a very fun moment. So anyway, so I made a slide about it so I could share that. Okay, so I wrote, perceiving a living light energetic tapestry, connecting dots, visions, energetic scaffolding, grid of reality. And now, again, even though I made this over like a year ago or about a year ago, the article that Maya Nartumid released April 1st, 2026, about 2 days before I'm recording this on April 3rd, 2026, is very, very connected to what I was perceiving. And yeah, so I will reference her article as well, but I'll start with what I wrote. Oh, and I have like a little visual. I'll try and link this particular slide in Substack so that eventually I'll have like visuals that will be shown. And I'll probably have this written in Substack too, this part in particular. Okay, the outermost aura layer, I wrote this under the visual, containing our soul's purpose, karmic patterns, and divine blueprint, encompassing the totality of our existence across lifetimes. And then I wrote visual experience unfolding in stages, emergence, darker blue lines and branches appear around me, becoming more detailed as your eyes relax, akin to an egg cracking. Growth and structure. These lines and branches continue to grow, forming, quote, an etheric web with spheres of light appearing in particular spots. Yes, the spheres of light are very, very crucial to this. Oh, and I referenced a scene in the movie Madame Web. And I just explained this today, like I said, on Patreon. So, but in the scene on Madame Web, I was guided to watch that movie, and the visual in the part, I don't want to ruin the movie in case anyone wants to watch it. I know it got a lot of not great reviews, but this part really helped describe. It was like such a visual aid of what I had been experiencing. So when I saw it, I had to pause and be like, oh my God, this is like such a good depiction if I had to show. where the main character goes into a cave and one of like the spider people throw her back. And it's, you know, it's similar to what I was just talking about with the cat too, you know, like hiding the presence of ourselves. Like she and her mother who died at childbirth, like she didn't know these parts of herself. Anyway, so the guy like throws her out of her body and her astral body is shown. And then she like reconnects with her hidden ancestry and memories. And then a web appears with these like, each person kind of turns into like a portal of light on this web. And yeah, so it's very particular visual that is exactly to describe like what I experience and see. And then I wrote, dynamic movement. After 30 seconds or so, this entire structure begins to, quote, concave and convex all around. And then I wrote, Oraculous style channel. What are we tapping into? Yeah, so that's like something I was asking. And then I got a response. Behind the scenes or veil. And of course I wrote next to that, open to interpretation. Real-time experience while recording for Patreon, being shown this, and then having the excerpt from the Ascension Glossary intuitively drawn beforehand unfold. And this was the excerpt from the Ascension Glossary, the Avalon portals link. Okay, so the key concepts, interconnected elements, the Emerald Tree of Life, a core structure entwined into the dark matter or Rasha body of the planetary Cathara grid, plasma gel rings, lines and branches bursting into massive spheres of radiant light, oceanic waves of moving solar plasma rainbow color waves, these aurora colors, which I talk about the aurora encryption quite a bit. I was talking about it today. So again, this was all very synchronistic because it was like, yeah. Okay, these aurora colors of the Holy Mother Sophia suggest dynamic, colorful energy within these spheres emanating from a divine feminine source, travel through the God worlds into the closest tree of life that forms into the dense material reality of this world. Implies these are higher dimensional energies or structures manifesting into physical reality. Emerald tree branches in Tara extend into the northern pillar gateway of YGGDRASIL. Causes aurora borealis like starburst to flame. Okay, so that, you know, came through. And then Maya's work, almost a year later, that, like I said, came out 2 days ago from when I'm recording this, is talking all about, so I read the first few paragraphs on Patreon in the Microdosing Change Quantum Neural Network Transmission. So if you want to tap into that, you can find that on my Patreon. I'm not going to redo it because I just don't feel guided to. But like I said, you can look at the article yourself, and she talks about essentially this golden, I'll read the first paragraph just so we know what's going on. The golden city is a profound and multidimensional reality that exists simultaneously as a celestial location within the inner planes and as an evolutionary neural gateway within the human vessel. It represents a pivotal threshold in humanity's spiritual and biological progression toward what is known as World System 2. And then she goes into like the macrocosm expression and then the microcosm expression. And the temple of Lakshmi, which Lakshmi was showing up all week in very synchronistic ways before this article came out. And I felt, as soon as I saw it post, I was like, I need to see what this article says. Like, I just felt it. And then she talks about access to the central temple is granted through the Lady of the Emerald Gate. And I share those synchronicities as well on Patreon if you want to go deeper with that. I was already talking about the Emerald Consciousness, so, and that's been coming through for off and on, but especially like the last 2 months, I would say. It's come through my dream time, and then it was manifesting through Patreon, and just, yeah, so that's been very present. Maya also says the universal dynamic of the Golden City is intimately equated with Shambhala and Shangri-La. It's a place of pure design, spiritual nourishment, and peace, acting as a portal of ascension into higher states of being where you may enter and commune with kindred souls. And then she has a similar visual that also depicts sort of what I was talking about in the visual that I just described. And I just want to take a pause for a moment. Yeah, there's so much here in this article that I feel like I could keep going, but because she already wrote it and I already tapped into a lot of this on Patreon, like I said, I will bring more of the rest of the article that I have not read on Patreon during the guided astral journey. But I want to tap more into the Tuat De Danann and the Druidess and the Druid connections through this key. So Avalon and Druids are deeply intertwined in Celtic mythology. Right, so this will be the, I should have said this in the beginning probably, but the Celtic mythos, you know, like we did Norse, now this is Celtic, which is bringing through strongly, again, the Fae, the Druids, the Druidess, Tuat De Danann, Avalon, and modern spiritualism representing a mystical, quote, other world of healing and magic, often associated with Glastonbury Tor in Druidry. It is a spiritual space for self-discovery and inner journeying, while in fiction, they are often protectors of the land. And I did mention, like, the grid work that came really strongly in the Norse connection. And of course, that is so present in the Druidry, as it says here, and in the Celtic traditions, as they are, stewards of the land, and why they say the Fae come to them so strongly because of that connection to the land and the grids. So even though with the Avalon, Mists of Avalon connection, there is still such a grounded and like earthly, very strong earthly connection. So according to the Druids, and what I found here, they consider Avalon a parallel magical world, a place of homecoming, expanded spiritual senses, and deep healing. Avalonian tradition and modern spiritual paths such as training, they focus on Arthurian legends and the priestess traditions connected to this mystical isle. And yeah, in a lot of Celtic science, they talk about the Arthurian timelines. And of course, the, King Arthur and... The hallway is getting loud again. Maybe I will do a quick pause. And Queen Guinevere, I know there's a lot of parallels in other teachings that people talk about the archetypes of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere and how that has manifested throughout time and different emanations. So some of you may feel connected to that. Of course, in the Arthurian Grail lineages and the Celtic Druid Grail bloodlines that reside within Ireland and Scotland. That's also an Ascension Glossary link. Of course, so the Albion light body has been coming through for quite a bit now. And I keep trying to focus on some of the more traditions of the Druids, but I keep being taken back to some of the more ascension mechanics behind it. So I'm doing my best to just kind of let that come through as it does. But Albion, they say in the ancient days, the oldest name for England was Albion. The names for Scotland in the Celtic languages were also related to Albion. Alba in Scottish, Gaelic, Alba in Irish, and Albion in Welsh, Cornish, and Breton. These names were later anglicized to Albany, which is another alternative name. But the Albion light body that has been coming through for quite a bit of time now. I want to take a second with that. So according to the Ascension Glossary, when the Albion light body is activated through the Emerald Order Cosmic Heart and fully awakened by the Amethyst Order, Holy Father, England, Scotland, Ireland, and France will be the first demographic areas to align in the King Arthur timeline through the rise of Arthur and Albion. Now, I take that with a grain of salt, and excuse me, this was probably recorded some time ago. So sometimes when I tap into some of external references, I'll sort of get pings of like if there's been changes in the timeline, or if something came through that maybe was not basically like if it's dated information in some way. So for some reason when I was reading that, it felt a little bit dated. But coming back to some of the connections that Druids can interpret. So obviously they have a deep connection to nature, and they often interpreted Avalon as a source of and repository for nature's power and ancient wisdom. I was just asked to just sit back and close my eyes for a second. And the Tuat De Danann, when they were coming through, as soon as I said that, I could feel like heat rising through the heart and the back of the spinal cord. The vertebra, they're showing me the vertebra, and the word like supernatural, and the silver, like they always come through for some reason, like a silver ray or like a silver frequency. Okay, so today when I was tapping back into what I had written on the Canva presentation, another slide, I was focusing on the slide that I had just read during this, but my mouse like hovered and accidentally, well, it really wasn't an accident, but the next slide appeared, and it was pretty synchronistic because it's what I wrote of the Aurora time spiral, the heliotalic spectrum, soul-infused walk-in experience, and I talk about the Akash womb portal, which I have. And it's funny because when I was speaking on Portal to Ascension, I honestly was very nervous. Like I was so nervous, but I was getting out of my comfort zone, and both times that I spoke, the Akash womb portal that I speak about came through, and I didn't realize it until after, and I was like a little bit like, oh, I have so many things I want to talk about. Like, why would I talk about the same thing, But I just had to trust that there was a reason that it came through twice. I like told the same story twice, and I have a thing with like retelling stories, but when you get into this, sometimes I've just learned to like just trust what comes through and trust the energy. But the Dora Torah plates were coming through really strongly, and I didn't expect them to come in. But now that I'm connecting dots to the silver frequency that I've been connecting with through the the Tuat De Danann, long before, not so long, but definitely before I connected or reconnected back with the Dora Torah plates, which are silver discs, allegedly holographic silver discs. They're showing me the connection now. Silver metallic discs, actually a part of a larger apparatus, holographic recordings, transmissions, and storage containing our history, our angelic blueprint lineage, among many other intersecting themes in our 15-dimensional time matrix physics. Our universal time matrix has been the basis of what I've been feeling pulled to focus on. That's what I wrote. Some topics were polarity integration, zodiacal time period, the Taurus connection, mother archetype, the Hathors, navigating internal guidance, references for further resources. And I wrote the Golden Council Triad of Light, the Father Arc, Mother Arc, and Christos Sophia, the Elohai Seraphi, and Aurora Soul Time Matrix Shift Paradigm, Crystalline Zero Taurus Stargate. I did do a transmission about the Crystalline Zero Taurus Stargate, but basically what's coming through these encoded words and why it's coming through a soul-infused walk-in experience that I don't think I'm going to share in this portion of the transmission, but this silver frequency I'm just taking a pause. I just took a sip of my beverage, and I'm feeling like a trickling in, like something's trickling. An energetic trickle. My nose is getting very, I can feel energy like bursting through the nose. So I've been like working with Gemini and putting in some of my like stream of consciousness writing, and it like spits back some information or structured ways of structuring what's been coming through. And I just wanted to read, and of course all of this is just from the lens, like I'm not deeming any of this as fact, just what I feel guided to share. But yeah, if you have any like connections, please feel free to share. And there's also like a really strong, again, emphasis on like, I keep being shown this one dream that I had where I was sleeping in the dream with a citrine crystal on my solar area, you know, like the solar plexus, the inner central sun's coming through, grand central sun, and that solar masculine consciousness, Christos. And in the dream, this citrine crystal, when I woke up, I like put the crystal in my hand, and like a little fairy being came out of the crystal, or like I think it like shapeshifted into a little fairy being. And then when someone else came in the room, it like turned back into a crystal. It was like small enough to fit in the palm of my hand. But again, it also was like, it had this shape-shifting ability to it. And I've had quite a few dreams that were very similar to that, where I was connecting with these different beings that we would maybe call in the Fae lineages. And often they would like shapeshift in and out of something, whether it was like a crystal. I also remember and it's often like when I'm doing mundane things, like I was sleeping, and then another dream that I had, I was doing dishes somewhere where there was like a garden. And as I was doing these dishes, I was very focused on the dishes in the dream. And these two fairy beings, one of them was like, you know, like when you connect in the soul stream, and it was like basically a version of me and then a version of someone that I know in this reality, a masculine. And the two versions, it was like our faces. Well, one of them was my face, the female, and then the other one was the masculine face. And they were smaller beings also, and one was like, the female was like a violet. Was it the female that was violet? And no, maybe the masculine one was violet, and then the feminine was like this, they were both like bioluminescent. One was violet, one was blue. They were winged, and they were just so joyful. And they kept coming through the door and pulling on my pant leg or whatever I was wearing, like to come play and to stop doing the dishes. So like, you're doing too many mundane things, like come play. So eventually I came with them and played with them in the garden. So you could have these like remembrances or dreams, or, you know, maybe meditations. Maybe some of you, when you're actually awake and doing things, you may see. So they're showing me now experiences that I've had that maybe you have of, for some reason, it's like almost like a cylinder orb. Like they're, yeah, kind of like a cylinder shape. And I will often see, like if I'm scrying with the sun or I'm seeing sun codes, and then I look in like a tree or something, I'll see these like cylindrical, almost like bioluminescent orbs float around, and then they'll show me like codes and stuff within the orbs. So you could be having, whether it's like a similar experience, or there may be something that you personally experience that may not be that, but it's like you get that same feeling that there's these internal inner planes communicating with you in some way. I'm being taken to another experience. Similar theme, where I was doing something very human in the dream. I was somewhere, some of you may be like asking your, like, you know, people will talk about like a fairy name or a fae name or an angelic name, especially with like something at the end, like an A at the end, or la, I'm just hearing that for someone. I'm so hot all of a sudden. like I can feel the heat building. And in the dream, so I was walking up these stairs and I was in this like cafeteria setting. It was pretty modern and there were all these people around. And I just kept being guided to go like up the stairs wherever I was. So there were like multi levels to this cafeteria. And I get to the top and I like could see everyone somehow. What I like to call astral physics, you know, like in these states, it's not the same physics as this reality, so astral physics. So I was able to like see everyone and no one was paying attention at all. And I just like got drawn to look at the back of the wall, and this being appeared, and she, I don't know, it was like an angelic fae frequency, like a high, like a mix, and she almost looked like Shirley Temple. She was like young. I don't know what her age was, like, but she appeared as young, but also like really like sort of like wise and like an elder, but in the body of like a young child. And she took up like the whole wall. She was almost like holographically projected, and she was just smiling from ear to ear. Like her smile was just like filled with this like white golden light. And she winked at me. And I was looking around like, how is no one else seeing this, you know? And then I woke up. So there could be like these experiences that you have that help reconnect you. And I feel like I could keep going because like now all these memories are coming in, but I'm going to stop there. But I just wanted to share some experiences. And like I said, if you have any that you want to share, I would love to hear about it. And I'm often like a silent listener, and I'm trying to be better at like commenting and stuff because yeah. So if you don't want to share, that's totally okay as well. I understand and appreciate however you decide to interact, or even if it's just silent listening. So thank you for that. Anyway, so I put some of this into Gemini and some of the things that came back. So a connection is, to share the unique way that the the union of the Druid, so the structure, the oak, and the Druidess, the mist and the seeress. So basically like the power dynamics that seem to have been at play were not about like one over the other, and it was more, it says here like triadic harmony. That's like words that I use, so I'm sure that's just what it's giving back to me. But basically like there was a distribution of power, like it wasn't a competing power dynamic. And that's a really significant because I had written an article, one of my first, I don't know if I can call it an article, I had written something years ago about a pariarchy. You know, we say like matriarch and patriarch. So yeah, I'm not doing as much research as I usually do, but I'm just being shown things. And apparently through the Druid lineages, there was this understanding of working together with masculine and feminine energy. Now, that's not to say that there weren't dark periods, and perhaps there, like any lineage can be, you know, we lose that consciousness, or we can fall in consciousness and then have these more, you know, unconscious roles play out. But the harmony of the Druid connection, and I was literally writing about the pariarchy today, and I was being reminded that I wrote that for however long ago, which always really connects me back into like the Orion constellation. There's so much duality that comes through Orion, but allegedly in Mintanka, there was this very balanced, integrated masculine and feminine consciousness. And I feel like with the Druid teachings, again, it's really coming through strongly as this integrated masculine and feminine. Maybe not so much integrated, but like working together. And then this next octave that a lot of us are remembering is like the integration and birthing that next octave. So from a linear perspective, maybe not so much, but from like a non-linear perspective, it's coming through in that way. So the children of Danu, translation from the Tuatha De Danann. And it said in the early Irish Druidic systems recognized the Druidess, known as the Bandrui, Bandrui, I'm sure I'm saying that incorrectly, my apologies, as a legal and spiritual equal to the Druid. Yeah, there's just this like balance that I feel. Of course, balance with the natural world, balance with each other, and understanding the energetics, and of course the connection through other realms and the supernatural aspect to humanity that we've had like within us this whole time, you know. Of course, the oak symbolism is coming through, and something about the belief, allegedly, of the immortal technology from the Tuatha De Danann. They were said to have arrived in Ireland in a cloud of mist. So there's that vapor, the mist energy, the mist of Avalon. And it says, they didn't arrive by boat. They arrived by, quote, manifestation. The connection. This is the ultimate Druidess. I'm saying that weird. Collaboration. It's the ability to turn a high-frequency visualization into a physical landing. So when the Druid and Druidess frequencies merge, quote, getting by ends and landing in the mist begins, is the way it came through the language that I use with Gemini. It's the move from the... Oh, okay. I'm not going to read that part. So the Tuatha De Danann, and the eyes. So in lore, these people were masters of fifth. I think that is a word that means faith, but I'm not sure. I'm getting the energy of faith, but it says the Druids missed, or a form of shape-shifting that affected how others saw them. Yeah, so in the dream, when I connected this energy, like I was saying, there's a lot of that. Holographic projection, the way that they like live within these natural elements like crystals and then shape-shift in and out. There's also something about the lineages and having these dormant druidic memories or gifts, and that can manifest through different things. Like, for example, I'm actually, I think, creating another type of series. I'm not 100% sure yet, but connected to what I'm about to say. And like the women I've realized in my family on my mother's side, almost all of them have some sort of like eye issues. And I've gone through different layers of the core reason of that, but I think a lot of that is like this dormant inner vision, you know, that has been suppressed over generations. And I myself had grown up with, quote, eye issues, and I think it's coming through as like this like pay attention, you know, like remember type of thing. I could keep going with it. There's so much there, but I'm just kind of touching on that, and I will go more into that in another series, not in this one. But I did just want to say, like, you know, if you've noticed themes within your ancestral lineages, and or maybe like dreams or connections that you have through, whether it's like celestial, cosmic, galactic, and then you may find like, you know, other people who have similar, whether it's like, you know, physical disease within the body, or even like traits that you might do that relate to other people. There's something about that, like identifying patterns and like the core layers and messages within that to help remember certain things. There's also like a connection of the Druid and the Druidess connected to sovereignty. And something that Gemini wrote back is they understood that you don't need a map when you are the landscape. So unlocking this third key, you're reclaiming the oak and the site, the iron and the vapor of our own Avalon. Very interesting. Yeah, and like I said, I really wanted to go more into like the history. So like the Druids and the Druidesses were elite, highly educated, and influential figures in ancient Celtic society. Gaul, Britain, Ireland, from roughly the 4th century BCE, acting as priests, judges, healers, and philosophers. They were crucial to maintaining social order and transmitting knowledge orally, with many taking up to 20 years to train. And, that, you know, I didn't know that but that's what I was talking about in the dream, when there was like this bypassing that was happening, and in these Avalonian portals and connection through the Celtic like lineages, that was this like, even though it was coming through me in the dream, I felt like many beings, like of the collective of us who feel connected to that like guardian stewardship consciousness of like protecting these portals and like the CDT plates, these blueprint information that needs to be kind of processed through initiation and not just through, any hands that are not ready for it. And that's not to say anyone's better than anyone. Like we probably all have had different incarnations and times and memories, or at least ancestors or future incarnations where maybe, I don't want to speak for anyone. Like we all have our different individual consciousness, and then we have that, again, that quantum collective consciousness. So yeah, this is just the way it was coming through. And that idea of taking up to 20 years to train doesn't surprise me by the energy that's been coming through this, this transmission of really like allowing for that, again, patience, perseverance, and embodiment, because they are so known for their connection with, the natural world, which happens to include these other realms, because that is a part of our natural world and our natural memory and understanding. I remember it was one of the first YouTube transmissions I ever recorded, and I was staying with a friend, and I would often go to this little, she lived like right near woods, and I would go to the woods a lot because I just felt the call to do that. And I started doing grid work a lot, and I was kind of like embarrassed at that time, not embarrassed, but I kind of thought like, oh, like, am I really doing this? Like, am I making this up? But I just kept getting these like really strong urges. And one of the times that I opened up the channel was like when like I said, I first started YouTube, these grids started to appear, and I was feeling these grids and these beings coming through and like working with me on like portals and how to like work with grid work. And it felt very connected to these lineages and that I'm bringing through now. And I remember they were showing me these like holographic, now I'm looking back at the CGT plates, but these basically like, if you want to use the word fog or mist to talk about how it can also like, there's like the supernatural aspect of connecting through other realms through these fog and mist, but then also it's like a protective mechanism is what they're showing me now of those who aren't ready yet, that aren't ready to scry and remember and see through. It's a protection. I just keep hearing protective mechanism. And so when your consciousness comes back online and you're ready for that, some people are born with it. Some people, maybe it shuts down and then comes back online, or you go through different phases. But like, it's always there, like it's these other realms never really went anywhere. It's accessible through within our own stream of consciousness. So yeah, that just really wanted to come through. So in the Druidess, the female Druids, the active roles. So by the way, this original idea came through as like the high priestess archetypes throughout like Oraculous lineages. But even though that was like the initial deep dive or like signal that pinged me to do this, there's so much that goes into it that like I wanted to bring the high priest and high priestess archetypes and then how it all works together through each lineage. So yeah, so the active roles for the female Druids, historical accounts indicate that women were active participants in Druidry, fulfilling roles as priestesses, seers, and keepers of knowledge. Respect and power, they were respected figures within their communities and were known to be healers, herbalists, and advisors. Myths and history, while often considered a male-dominated class, Roman and Greek accounts as well as Irish mythology confirm the presence of female Druids, often called Druidesses. So the key historical insights, no written records, Druids forbidden to write down their teachings, so all knowledge was passed down through oral tradition. If anyone here has like a different perspective on that, please feel free to share. you know, because I know there's someone, I can't remember her name right now, but she has a YouTube channel, and I think she's also spoken on Portal to Ascension, and I believe she was like ordained as a Druid priestess, like not just etherically, but like I think she actually did something like a study with, if I'm not mistaken. So there could be, you know, like some occult, you know, like hidden things, but according to like the main research, it's all oral tradition. I'm also being shown like right now I just saw these like illuminated glyphs, and I have not been to England before, just in the airport, but I'm sure in like particular places of historical Druidry, there's, I don't know this for sure, this is being shown like markings, you know, within nature that probably, for those who can reconnect in, probably receive like encoded information that way, just like with crystals as a technology, you know, like people have used encoded crystalline technology in actual crystals and crystalline consciousness, and now they're showing me like, you know, trees and of course like fairy rings, and there's just, you know, different ways of remembering and receiving information. They were known to hold ceremonies, Druid rituals in sacred sites, natural places like forests, as well as ceremonial monuments. They were associated with ceremonies involving nature, such as gathering mistletoe with a golden sickle. I don't know why that word made me laugh, a golden sickle. Yeah. Okay, so now there's something. I just found something about Irish myths, and it does say here, it's like some sort of irishmyths.com. Classical historians spent a lot more time writing about men than they did about women. Before I contribute anything else to this conversation about the presence and roles of female Druids in the ancient Celtic societies, I need to reiterate that important caveat. There just isn't a lot of text to work with here, at least not when you go way back, and not when you compare it to what's written about male Druids. Which I think a lot of like research that I've done over the years, I mean, historically, that's what we were talking about in the beginning of this. Like the feminine was kind of like written out of a lot of traditions, whether it was oral traditions, biblical, you know, like these different ancient texts. And I know from some books and other people that I've listened to where they're finding these. Was it the Magdalene manuscript that like apparently was like, I think it was the Magdalene manuscript, I could be wrong, but that it was like basically taken out and hidden, and now it's like being refound. You know, there's like a lot of I suppose like the rise of that patriarchal influence that was kind of maybe detaching a bit from any of the texts written about the feminine connection. So yeah, again, this is just coming through as some of my own research, and if anyone like listens and they have a different perspective, like I said, I always welcome that, and I'm not trying to apply any of this as fact, just as the way it's coming through the transmission, and to help all of us who are interested in this to have these like conversations and encoded transmissions, you know, hatch codes as we receive them. So yeah, I'm going to end it here, and I will be posting the Patreon guided journey and the Substack article when I feel the ping to do so. But yeah, thank you so much, and that's all.